Welcome to our second show of Artists Unplugged Live. I am Lay'Na Anderson.
And I'm Sharon Walker, and we're on Artists Unplugged Live.
And today, I'm going to pull up my notes because
Need the notes.
don't trust my memory for anything at all. But today we're going to be talking about inspiration and motivation and how does that work for both of us? How does that work for building a community?
Yeah.
But before we get started, what have you been up to this week?
This week has been a busy week personally. But I'm in the middle of revamping my studio. I used to have, as you know, spray booth in there.
Yes.
That I wasn't using as a spray booth. It was sort of like this big storage room, and it was taking up a lot of space and also blocking windows that probably no one realized that was in my studio. So the spray booth came down and the windows are beautiful and there's natural light in there now. So now I'm in the process of stacking and binning, and I can't throw anything away because I may need it, right? So that's what I'm in the process of, physically in the outside world. And then in my inner world, I have my next series that I want to work on. And so I'll talk more about that as we're talking about inspiration and motivation, about what's going on in here. How about you?
Me, finishing up this TV show. So for those of you who don't know, I'm also a makeup artist for film and television. And so right now I am working on BMF season 4, Stars, watch it. And when it comes out, and so we are on the tail end. It's the last episode. It's a big episode. So my days have been, I have my task list thinking, I start the day with all this hope and promise, such. Nothing happens. But it's good. We wrap next week. And so I have not been in the studio. I actually haven't been in the studio since our last show.
Oh,
this is my first time back in the studio since our last show. So like you, I don't know what gremlin came in here and destroyed everything. That's what I'm going to blame it on. But I need to come in here and get it organized. And then also my new body of work. I discovered something wasn't working, so I'm kind of back at square zero. Last week was spent hunting down a package that was shown delivered, and they took it back to the post office. Okay. So now that I have that, I can now start back with that body of work, and then, hopefully get that done within the next couple of months, really.
Yeah. Well, also, actually, you're not at ground zero because you've learned something from what you did. So it's a new ground zero with, a different foundation, I guess.
True.
Yeah.
True. With information that I didn't have before.
Right.
So now that should hopefully, you're going to have snags and everything.
Yeah.
But hopefully that it'll be less snags because now I've hopefully problem solved.
Yes.
The issue without having to rework the whole plan. And basically it's just the way I'm mounting it.
Right. Okay.
And so it's either abandon the way I was going to mount it or try a thinner cord.
Okay.
So the thinner cord was what was showing delivered, and everybody's telling me it was delivered. I'm like, when I showed up at the post office, oh, it's in the back. So there we go.
That's post office.
That's post office. USPS.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your inspiration. Tell us a little bit about your inspiration for this new body of work.
So this new body of work, well, first and foremost, I get my inspiration, my color palettes, my titles, I get them in dreams. I usually wake up with a title. I'm like, okay, Lord, so this is what we're doing. All right, got it, that's my title. And I may not have a color palette, or I'll have a color palette and don't know what I'm gonna do with it until I come in the studio. So with this particular body of work, I've always loved ombre. I call it hyper blending for myself. Like even in my makeup, I blend makeup. Sometimes I have to like, okay, wait, I overblended.
Uh-huh.
So I've always loved overblending. I've always loved the ombre, gradations. I've always loved that. So last year, gradation pieces just kept popping in my way. And so I did a mini series last year for the holidays of like 5x7s, different colors, and each color scheme had a different word attached to it. So love, kindness, patience, peace, joy. And I did that during the holidays, and then fell in love with it. People loved it, make note cards for the holidays and whatnot. And then I was having a conversation, and I mentioned this in our last show with one of our friends, and just happened to casually mention that I crochet and knit. And then I got the stare down as to why is that not a part of your body of work. And so then I'm like, well, I don't even know what I would do with that. And then I talked to you about it, and you gave me some ideas.
Right.
And so then once I came up with that concept, I'm like, okay, I know what I could do with it, or how I can use it, but what am I doing with it?
Right.
And then one day I was like, take the gradation paintings and transfer it over to the fiber art body of work.
Yeah, okay.
So the inspiration was, although I love the 5x7s, painting gradation, that type of gradation that I was painting they're 5x7s, and I used literally every brush in the studio. And then I was asking Sid, and I borrowed half of her brushes to get the blending down right.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to abandon the project, so I'm like, how can I still do this project and not drive myself crazy and use every single brush in Atlanta to make it happen? And so once we had like the fiber art conversation, I'm like, well, what is my color palette going to be? I'm like, my color palette is I call it the simplicity of the series.
Yeah.
So my color palette is the 6 pieces that I previously painted.
Right.
And so maybe I feel like the painting of it was the sketchbooking of it, to work it out, to see what color I wanted to attach to what simplicity. And now that was the sketchbook, now that's actually what I am to use for the fiber arts.
So your 5x7 sort of became your studies.
They became my study.
Right.
See, inspiration. Exactly. My 5, I hadn't thought about it like that. My 5x7s were the studies.
Yeah.
And then once I did the studies, now even through conversation that we've had about the series, even taking that study and doing it in a multitude of different ways, and keeping within what I want is I want each color palette and each simplicity to have its own. That's what it is. So this particular color palette is grace, and this color palette is kindness. And they don't really cross over unless I'm doing something with both words. Type of a deal.
Yeah.
So yeah, I hadn't thought about that. 5x7s were actually my studies.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I learned something new today.
I only say that because last night I went to an artist talk. Cole Nichols has a show at White Space. And so his artist talk was last night, and he does a lot of architectural. I'm sure you've seen his stuff. He's actually next door to me at my studio.
Oh, yeah.
So he does a lot of architectural stuff, and he had done etchings on metal plates, and then those etchings turned into paintings. And so the etchings were his study, and then the paintings were some type of derivative. You know, he said there's one etching which he showed us that actually the painting was the etching, but all of the other ones were some form. It was inspired by the study, which was the metal plates. But the metal plates is artwork in and of itself. It just, now took him one step further. Yeah. So for inspiration for me, I've been thinking about trees for a while, actually, and it actually started with an irritation. And my irritation is all the junk mail that I receive in the mail. And back to USPS, right? But it's not just that it's a bunch of junk mail. It's trees that were cut down to create this paper, to mail me a bunch of stuff that I'll never ever use. I didn't ask for, won't use it, and it irritates me, right? Because, you know, trees are the lungs of our earth, and, you know, we're always talking about climate change, and what are we going to do differently? So that was the irritation. So I started saving all of the junk mail, right? One, to take a picture of, look how much junk mail, right, I've gotten in the past week, in the past 2 weeks, in the past month. So I have boxes of junk mail at my studio, which I can't throw out because I'm going to use.
Right.
And so so now I was inspired to reuse that paper somehow. And so my thought is to break that down and then create paper from that paper. And I already use, as you know, a lot of paper in my work. But I want to utilize paper in a new way. And so that way I'm paying homage to the trees and, you know, creating a story from trees. So I'm looking at trees everywhere I go. Thankfully, there are a lot of trees in Georgia. So I'm looking at the different trees and the shapes of the trunks and the branches. And actually last night at White Space, I was like, oh, look at this tree. And I pull out my camera and I, you know, zoom out so I can get a whole picture of the tree. And so I'm using that so that's what's going on internally with me, is how can I take this inspiration of trees, which I love. I've already previously had an affinity to trees. You know, I'm a person that would go up and hug a tree. I would, right? And I've, you know, meditated at the base of a tree. And so I really have a lot of affinity for trees. And if I need energy balancing, yes, I'm into that. I will energy balancing.
Energy,
like
I thought you said itchy.
Oh, no.
It's like an itchy.
Okay. Now, energy balancing, like if I'm disturbed emotionally, just touching a tree can help me
Ground yourself.
ground myself. So I already have that affinity. I'm irritated by all of the junk mail, and so I'm merging it into a series of, you know, I haven't gone into the studio, but I'm itching to get
into the studio.
And but there are all these other
No, keep talking to me just this.
Yeah, there are all these other things that I need to sort of move out of the way to be able to do what I'm doing. So that's what I'm working on, but also inspired by, again, I'm going to talk about Cole Nichols' art talk last night because it's fresh in my mind. But just the way he spoke about looking at architecture, and then for him, it, you know, works into spaces. And, you know, is it a space that you can enter? How do you enter the space, with windows or with a door? Can you go into the space? Can you not go into the space? And the title to his exhibition is Not Twice. And
Not twice?
Not twice.
Not twice. Okay.
So it's about how you enter a space as well. Are you welcomed into the space? So now that has me thinking on another level of, okay, how can I transfer that thinking sort of to how I'm thinking about trees too, the space they take up, the space they don't take up anymore if we cut down the trees.
Which I'd love to do in Atlanta.
Yeah.
It's a new building every corner.
Yeah. Well, all over,
Yeah.
unfortunately,
Right.
all over the world. And so even something like that is, now I'm in community, right? So I'm there at an artist talk with other artists, with even a couple of gallery people, and I'm in that space and I'm receiving information from all forms. You know, there was another exhibition there I'm not, I'm terrible with names. I'm really sorry. I'm not remembering the artist's name. I mean, well, lucky I remember Cole Nichols' name, right? And I know him well, okay?
Know him
but
personally.
personally, I don't know him true, not well, but I know him personally. And so I'm looking at, you can look at other artwork and what do I like about this? What do I not like about this? Actually, I saw another show. I happened to be at South River Studios last weekend.
Yeah, you told me, yeah.
Right, and there's a great exhibition there. Again, not remembering. Not
What
remembering.
happened?
Memory card is full, and I know why. I have it. Anyway.
The joys of going long.
Yeah, and so actually I went for a welding class, right, which was really, really interesting. But I got a chance to go into their gallery space, and the artist, his first name is Mark, and I'm forgetting his last name, but he does this amazing, some of the work are cutouts, but it's, so say for example, a tree trunk that we're looking at with, the yard behind it, but that tree trunk looks hyper real. And then he's using neon type of paint in there. So in the dark, it shows differently than it shows in the light. And I'm like, wow.
So it glows in the dark?
It's, I guess glows. There's a iridescence coming off of it.
Gotcha.
And so that was inspiring as well. I knew another artist who did work using, once the black light showed up, you saw something different. Is that something I would like to do? I don't know, but it is a thought. It brings into. I'm wowed by the work, first of all, and then is it something that I would incorporate? I don't know, but it's not there. In my mind and in my experience of what I can draw on when I'm looking to be inspired. So yeah.
You say it's funny you mentioned how, now trees on your radar and you're taking pictures of trees. Mine's the sunsets. So I'm always, I was in my kitchen and I looked out the window, I'm like, oh my God, the sunset's gorgeous. So I'm grabbing my phone and running out to the bed, taking pictures of the sunset. When I'm on set, even, and we're shooting outside on location, I'm always taking pictures of the sun, and sunrises and sunsets. But again, it's that gradation.
Yeah, I was going to say that tends to be your color palette.
That's my color
palette. Right, so, I mean, I love sunsets as well. And however, it's, again, usually with trees. So I'm looking at a sunset. Look how the sunset looks through this tree. Have a few pictures of those as well, right? But I think trees have been coming into my experience to help me, to inspire me and motivate me as well, because I'm at the point now where I'm itching, to get started. Yeah.
Me too. The great thing about fiber art, well, for me, because I'm knitting, and I was only going to do this collection knitting. I know how to knit and I know how to crochet. I just prefer knitting over crochet.
Right.
Because for me, I can actually knit and not watch. Crochet, you get the wrong loop and it's a wrap. Like you no longer have a blanket if you get the wrong loop and if you discover it several rows later. So knitting, I can knit without watching.
Right.
That's my I can just not and just knit. And so originally I was going to do this first series just in knitting, and I was like, okay, I think I'm going to end up doing the original 6, because it's going to be open-ended that I might add to it as it hits me.
Yeah.
And so what I loved about the idea of doing that and being able to work on set is because we have downtime.
Yeah.
And so even though I'm not getting in the studio every day, I can knit a piece.
Right. You're working anyway. Yeah.
Right. So I'm in the trailer waiting for an actor to come in. I can sit there and knit while I'm waiting for them to come in.
Right.
Opposed to oh no, I'm on a show and I'm not going to be able to get into the studio every day, or you know what, I haven't been able to get in the studio all month when I can knit anywhere, knit
Right.
crochet anywhere.
Yeah.
So that's been great. That was the excitement of, okay, I can still get this collection done because I can knit at work, and then on Saturdays I'll paint.
Right.
And then of course the whole snafu with the
Yeah.
with the mounting, so that brought that to a screeching halt. So, but now that I've gotten the new materials, now I'm itching to like, okay, I gotta figure out the pattern, because once I figure out the pattern, I can start the actual collection of work.
Right. Yes.
So it's that definitely when we're not in the studio, you get that inspiration, and if you're one that has to be in the studio to do it because you paint or whatever you're doing, it doesn't translate in another location, then it's that itch to, I gotta get in the studio, I gotta get in the studio.
Yeah.
Like you can't stop thinking about it when you're inspired, because you're so ready to actually get your hands into
Right.
it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I think as well, for me, I feel like I'm actually always working because I'm always thinking about my work. You know, and or as I'd say, I sort of carry it with me, like in my mind, even if I'm not thinking specifically about something, it's there. I'm thinking about trees. I'm, you know, thinking, do I just want to look at two branches, or if there's, you know, there's a tree in my backyard that something in its growth caused it to curve. And so then I'm thinking about, you know, how life intervenes into shape, and then the analogy between, you know, whether the elements or whatever it was intervened on this tree, and then how that compares to how life or elements can intervene in a human's life, and then how does that turn you or bend you or, you know, whatever. So I am always thinking, then journaling, and then maybe sketching, right? Even though I haven't, it's probably been, since I've actually done work in the studio, it's been more than a month, or at least a month, because I went to Jamaica for a wedding. So that stopped work there, and then it's just been, you know, one thing after another. But yeah, it's still exciting. I still feel inspired and motivated, even though life has intervened and I can't be in the studio to actually work on what I'm working on.
And so do you find with inspiration, do you find
do I lose inspiration? Like you lost that thought?
that train completely left the station? We'll see if it comes back.
It'll come back.
Pick up some more passengers. But
Yeah, it'll come back.
As you were talking, I was thinking about like I had a thought, and then it. Oh, so I will ask this though: since you took the spray booth out, because
Yes.
your studio is 1,000 square feet.
Right.
So now that you've taken the spray booth out, now that you have this natural light, does part of this collection or this new direction, is that going to, or do you feel like well, you haven't been in the studio in a minute, but do you think it's going to dictate how you work in the studio now?
I absolutely, because I didn't I was thinking of moving studios. And when I thought of moving, part of it was, is this too much space for me? Not is it too much space for me, it was a cost factor. But then when I looked at moving, I was getting less space for, you know, much more money. And yeah, the other things were in it, but then I just felt I didn't want to leave. I wanted to stay there. And so, and that was, so one factor was the cost factor. But right now I'm sharing space with another artist who's there for at least 3 months, so I can, you know, figure out what I'm doing from there. The other thing was that I really need natural light. You know, I'm a person that I can stand in front of a window and stare out a window for 15 to 20 minutes straight, and I've always been that way. And so having windows where I can see trees outside the window, and it doesn't have to be sunny necessarily, but just having that window into another space or another, it helps me with my mental health, maybe I would say, and it will also help me to stay in the studio longer because I'm not rushing out to be in a space that's feeling more comfortable for me. Because I have a couch now, I can push the couch and lay down and stare out a window, because that's a good, just being lost in sort of thought and gazing is a big part of my process. And so that window, it's glorious when you see it. You'll feel that way because it also had this UV, like tinting on the windows, that we took that off, and now it's like, wow. And so that feels really good. And so that is going to help with my motivation to be in the studio for longer periods of time. I remember a friend of ours, he was saying to me, you just need to be in your studio, just be in your studio. But there was something going on inside that was making me want to be out of the studio. And, but I had one other studio that had a window in it, but there was no air circulating at all. And so that didn't work, and didn't work for other reasons. And so now that I have these windows, I feel like I can stay in this space for a while. And I move around a lot. In my life, I've moved around a lot. And so I'm trying to be still in a space. And so now I feel I can be still in this space for a while and see how the space can add to and inspire as well the work that I do.
Right. For me, so which I don't think yours goes to the top either. You're not closed.
No, I'm completely closed.
You're completely closed. Okay,
Yes.
so on this hallway, the only completely closed ones are the ones on the gallery side.
Uh-huh.
But I do have a skylight. And so what I do love about our hallway is we'll keep our doors open. We'll talk across the hall. If somebody needs privacy, they'll close the door, put their headphones on. But what we'll do is open the front door, and I'll leave this door open, and we'll get some nice sunlight. So it feels like I have a window.
Right.
If someone happens to have the garage door open, when the guys would have their garage door open, even though they had their main door closed. Because they had the garage door open, you still got more light in the hallway.
Yeah.
So just even that, I could tell sometimes I'm like, I just need to open up the door. Sometimes Stacy will be like, I'm gonna open up the front door, and just even though we're not directly having the windows in our studio, just even having that front door open and letting the sun coming out always a big help.
Yeah.
So that is, again, sometimes when you feel like the studio is a little too cold, sterile cold, you can't stay in it.
Yeah.
Like you've gotta.
Yeah, but you have some really good light in here as well. I didn't have that light, and there were some other lights that were in the spray booth. So that was sort of left behind when they tore down the spray booth. And then Jeffrey, our friend Jeffrey, used wires and strung it up. And when you turn on those lights now, it's much brighter as well. So that's another step in the right direction,
I will say that, because I have very bright light, which I love, but one thing I love is Sean, who's a couple doors down from you.
Yes.
When you all did open studios, his felt like a studio apartment.
Yes.
And I was outside of his fantastic sitting area that he has in the corner. But I kept for days. I even came back to Stacy and because I was telling her, I was like, we need to change your energy up in here.
Yeah.
And so I was like, there's something about the studio. What is it? And I realized it's the light. It's the paper chandelier that he has.
Okay.
Over his work table.
He, I think, is also almost like an interior designer.
Yes.
So he has brought that sensibility into his space. So you go in there, you feel like you're entering someone's home.
Yes.
Because the couch and the chandelier and the paintings and everything, which is lovely, you know. But his lighting is much softer.
Yes.
And if I had that soft light in my studio, I'd go to sleep. So that wouldn't necessarily work for me, but I will create more of a space of comfy and homey that will settle that feel for me of needing that in my space.
And I think that leans into motivation, because I feel like for me, you know, I had a studio mate. My studio was 330 square feet, and we divided it lengthwise. So if you imagine a rectangle basically, and split that rectangle long ways. My studio mate was on one side, I was on the other side. She creates wearable art, and she likes people around. So she would always have people around. There's always people around. It just got too much. Love her. We've been friends for 20 years and still are. But in my mind, when I thought studio, I thought more shop. More being able to bring clients in, which she did. Her clients would come and they would look at whatever she was creating and they would purchase. But I knew that, you know, once I got the space to myself, she, you know, moved on. One of the first things in my head was I want a sitting space.
Yes.
I want a comfy chair that I can take a nap in. I have fairy lights. I have warm clip lights.
Yes.
And so there are those moments when I'm in the studio, especially if I'm on hiatus in between shows, that I build into my day, my lunch break.
Yes.
And part of that lunch break is I turn off all the lights. I put on some incense. I always have my candle burning, but I burn some incense. I turn on the fairy lights. I turn on the soft lights. We envelop in the chair with the electric blanket. And sometimes I'm sitting here staring at the work that I'm working on.
Yeah.
Like it's like I don't have that window to stare out of, but I take that moment to let my mind just go.
Yes.
And sometimes it's staring at I may be looking at the work that I'm working on to figure out what I want to do with it.
Yeah.
And sometimes I just allow myself to get lost in it and let it talk to me. And sometimes I'm looking at, previous works of art. Sometimes I'll look at, okay, I remember I like that stroke that I did.
Yeah.
I discover new things in my other pieces of work by just allowing myself that downtime to be in the chair, lights off, electric blanket, snuggled up with the studio manager.
Yes.
And we're just sitting here chilling.
Yeah.
Cup of tea, and just like, again, I think that goes into the motivation and the inspiration, because once you, whatever in that moment is inspiring you, or what is sticking to you, or what is speaking to you, then it motivates you to then try it, do it, adjust it, or let it go. It's like, you know what, I keep touching this piece and this piece is done.
Yeah.
I keep wanting to do more to it, and it's telling me I'm done.
Yeah. Actually we're talking a lot about studio today, and maybe that's what we should be talking about. And I've lost my train of something specific I wanted to say about studios. But what is bringing to mind is sometimes there's comfort, and sometimes there's discomfort, and both are good. Both are there to tell you something. And so I was having discomfort in my space, and but I kept running from the discomfort. And maybe it really is not to run from the discomfort, but to sit in the discomfort for a little while, so that the information from the discomfort can come to you. Right? So I can figure out what is not working here. And I did figure it out, right? But I also moved, right? And it was just the discomfort of having to move again, beat out, figuring out how I can stay here. Plus I really had, I was feeling I was being told to stay. So, and so I did, And so we'll see what comes out of it. Yeah. I'm looking forward to it, of really getting back in to actually work. And so, but we're also preparing because Atlanta Art Week is coming.
Yes.
And Murphy Rails, where I am, has something during Atlanta Art Week. So we're preparing like the studio. You know, part of it was tearing down the spray booth. The fact that that happened opens up the space to do so much more with it. So we're preparing, you know, I'm collaborating with Paul on something, and so that's interesting too. So we'll see how, you know, and then that will just lead into the next inspiration for the next thing, the motivation for the next thing.
And so what do you feel like, so with Atlanta Art Week last week, because I know when we did our open studio, that was my second open studio. Yeah, second open studio, because we do ours during the holiday.
Right.
And so last year, Reen was here, and the year before that, she was here, but she was actually out of town that day. So last year was my first time doing an open studio by myself. My art was on display somewhere, so I didn't have a lot of artwork in the studio, but what I ended up doing is I ended up making ornaments based on all of my paintings.
Right.
So that went over really, really well, and I had someone kind of be like, what, are you selling blank canvases? You got a great collection of sponges. And I'm like, my artwork is actually on display somewhere, sir. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay, happy holidays. Get out here with that foolishness.
Yeah.
Do you want an ornament or not? So, but I know coming, you know, I'm already thinking about what do I want to do for this open studio. I am doing the, and I don't call them ornaments, I call them mini paintings, because basically they're direct, you know, correlations to a painting. But I know I want to do that, but what else I want, how I'm inspired and motivated to do what I want to do with open studio and the intention of what I'm doing opposed to my studio's open.
Right.
So now that you have done one art week there in your studio, and now you've taken the spray booth out and you have a new body of work on the mind, have you thought about what you may do differently, if anything, with this?
Yeah,
particular...
well, Jeffrey, who's sharing the space, actually wanted to curate something. So he's actually curating a show. I'm not going to say the title because I'm going to get it wrong. Southern Fruits, I think it is. And so he's doing an installation on sort of his side, and I'm collaborating with Paul to do an installation on my side with a couple of pieces that go along with that inspiration. Gotcha. And trees is the inspiration for the whole installation.
Gotcha.
So that is the plan. So I need to get in the studio and begin to work on that, because there's a lot that's going to go into it as well. I'm making paper, and I'm, you know, doing all that anyway. I hope I am.
Right.
Doing all that sort of stuff. But yeah, I think, so that is the plan, right? I don't have much of a plan after that.
Okay.
And actually I was with Jeffrey last night, and we were talking about other things, and he was sharing something else with me, another opportunity that I could get involved with. And I'm like, I don't know that I have the bandwidth to do that and to focus on this, and this is the bigger focus right now. So that's also, I think, we can get inspired to do many more things. And for me in particular, I can get scattered. So I have to be very intentional about what I take on and what I don't take on. Otherwise, I won't get anything done.
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah, so that's where I am with that. And then, you know, I have other side projects that I do that aren't directly related to creating art. So, you know, I have to even be more careful about what I allow in.
Right.
You know?
And same, I had to, I had put, years ago, and I got the idea from Jen, from Artists Alliance. There was a discussion on the boards about inventory. How do you inventory your?
Yes.
So she suggested the Airtable. So I put my inventory in Airtable. I didn't think anything else of it because I was using something else for task management.
Right.
And then I, at some point, abandoned that as well. But recently, Airtable came up again, and I'm like, I actually asked ChatGPT, you know, for a solopreneur, what's the best task management, project management, and it you know, went down the line, and I ended up, you know what, I'll use Airtable. I already have an account. My inventory is already in there. And so basically what I've been doing is putting my life in Airtable because along with my own body of work and also being on set, I'm also on the board of directors for the art, for you know, Avondale Art Alliance, and then I'm involved with PMAC, which is a makeup thing. So it's like I have all these other projects, and I have all these, it's like the meme with the Julia Roberts and the math symbols. And so finally I was like, okay, I gotta organize this and get it all on paper, because what was happening is I was losing my motivation to do anything because
you were overwhelmed.
I was overwhelmed. And again, the bandwidth of I've got the new body of work that should have already been halfway done, then this, then that, then the other. I've got a meeting today with something that I completely dropped the ball on. And so it goes back to that, you know, being an artist, we want to, of course, work on our own stuff, but you also want to make sure that you're outside of your studio, making connections, you know, being a part of the community, collaborating, and you know, even going to artist talks and getting inspired by listening to other artists talk about their process. Let alone going somewhere to meet and talk to somebody, to be then to be on somebody's board, to then to, you know what I mean? And so it is that thing where sometimes you just, like, all of it just goes.
Absolutely.
All of it just goes to the wayside, and you're trying to pick up the pieces, but but I was able to do that. You know?
Well, we're actually, I'm looking at the time.
What time
and
is
it's 10:49, believe it or not.
Are there any questions?
That's what I wanted to ask, if we have any questions from our audience, because we have talked a lot.
We've talked a lot.
But, you know, I've been told, I don't know how true it is, that I have the gift of gab. That could be why
She's
a whole
it like
50.
She knows that. Don't let her fool you.
So if we have any questions, please put them in the comment box, and we'll or even if it's not a question, a comment, or
tell us how you're inspired. How are you motivated? How do you stay inspired? How do you stay motivated? I will say this while we're waiting for any comments or questions. Whether you have a studio or not, and no matter where you do your art, whatever it is, if it's your kitchen table, a spare bedroom, the garage, the backyard, a he shed, whatever, that's your studio, okay? We all have those moments, because this is something that I had to learn. It actually, Ata, because I get it wrong every time. We were talking one day at Atlanta Art Week, he said, you know, it's like, I've been trying to get into the studio. I haven't gotten much accomplished. He goes, but you made it to the studio. So he goes, that within itself is a win. He goes, even if you don't do anything, the fact that you actually went in the studio, you know, is an accomplishment within itself. And so just know that, don't lose your motivation because you can't get in the studio. If you've got to draw it out, write it out, type it out, if it's something that is mobile, if you have paints at home, you know, work on your studies at home. So then when you get in the studio, you can work on the actual piece. You know, even if it has nothing, even if you're coloring in a coloring book, you know, just, you know, anything just to stay motivated. But don't think that because that's something I really have been working. And I think I've gotten to a place where I'm good, especially with this new body of work, the fact that I can knit anywhere. I really struggle with the fact of I'm on a show, like when we did last season of BMF, I did not come in the studio for 5 months. I didn't come in the studio for 5 months, and I was unmotivated between that and the situation with and there was no bad situation. It was just another, you know, person in the space.
But it's what has life brought you? What is the mix?
What is the mix?
Right.
What is the
mix?
And
there's maybe times when we don't have the bandwidth, we don't have the energy, whatever you want to call it, to deal with it all at one time.
Right.
And that's okay, you know. We also have to give ourselves grace, right? But I think we also need to, you know, look at how can I do something a little different, so that will create a different outcome. If you can't do it, you can't do it, right? But like, you know, sketch or talk to artist friends or, you know, look at art books or go to art talks or galleries or whatever it is. Anything that just keeps a little plug in to, you know, what you're doing, and can, you know, then something along there will, you know, spark. When the time is right, things will clear, and then there's a spark, and then you can continue again, you know. But that's the thing about community as well, is it's easier to get yourself back when you're in a community and you're plugged in these different places, and you get a spark to get back in, versus if you don't, if you're solo and you don't have other means of drawing you back into your art space, then it becomes harder to get in. So, you know, that's back to the whole motivation and inspiration side of it.
Right. Most definitely.
Yeah. So we're at 11:54. I don't see any comments. So I think maybe we're ready to wrap up.
Yeah. So.
And you know, I was thinking we've dropped a lot of names in here and first names. I think maybe what we'll do is when we, you know, post, we'll also put tags so that you can see the work of the artist that we're talking about, and so that you're not just
like,
yeah. Because I know you probably were like, who did she say? What did she say? And what is the name?
Right. And if you're catching the replay, know that you can watch the replay here on Instagram. You can also catch the replay on YouTube. We are doing show notes, so we can also put that information in the show notes. Make sure you sign up for the email list, and that is the form of that. If you go to the Instagram bio and click on the link, there's actually a form in the bio, so you don't have to click out of Instagram to sign up for the email list. So you can sign up right there, and there you get, we'll start doing newsletters, the show notes. We'll let you know when the replay is up, and that's just to stay connected with us. Also, if you're watching the replay and you do have a question or you want to make a comment, feel free to DM us. DM us your question or your comment, and also follow us on Threads. Yes, Threads, because that's where we'll do a lot of communicating amongst our community.
Yeah.
So,
and also we're ramping up with all of this stuff, so there may be times that you know, maybe we're not as consistent yet, but be patient with us and stick with us, because that's the direction we're in.
We're not on a schedule.
Yeah.
But it will get done. So we're not going to say every Tuesday you're going to get a newsletter.
Right.
You'll get one eventually.
Yes. Yeah. And we will become more regular. You know, we're also giving ourselves grace as we do this, because this is one of, you know, the many things that's going on. But we really enjoy this. So I hope you enjoyed being with us today. And we will see you in a month. The third month, we'll tell you it will be August.
1, 2, what, Saturday, third Saturday? 1, 2, wait, no, August 17th.
August 17th.
August 17th.
We will be back here live. Hope you'll join us.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.